Hey guys, how's it going? I'm back here with another video, and today I decided to bring this video where I'm going to be teaching you guys how to build an advanced search bar which basically filters through some data and displays the information in a very nice way. I've made a video in the past, and this is one of my most successful videos so far, and for that reason I wanted to actually make a more advanced version of that video. Maybe show you guys how to deal a little bit with actual data that you might receive from some sort of API and actually make the UI look nice. You can see this is what we're going to build. I created a JSON which includes basically data from books, and we can search for the books. For example, I can type here the words the, and it will consistently search for specific books, right? And I can actually click on one of these books, and it will open up the Wikipedia page for that specific book. I can also scroll down depending on how many books are presented. As you can see, if I search for TH, it will appear a bunch of books, but if I search something like PR, it appears just one. And something nice as well is if I click on this button over here, it will clear everything and we can just type again. I really like this kind of UI for it. I really like this kind of filtering, and I've used it in so many projects that I thought it would be a good idea to actually teach you guys how to do this, and I hope you guys will enjoy the video. Before we actually get into the video, if you guys could leave a like and subscribe if you're not subscribed, I would massively appreciate it. All the code for this video is going to be in the description, so if you want to check it out, just go there. Liking the video will definitely help support the channel. It will push the videos to more people. So yeah, that's basically it. Now let's get into the tutorial. Okay guys, so I just opened up here a new React application, as you can see, and I actually just put on some different files that are going to be necessary for our project. The first thing I did is I put on the just a simple app.js. I deleted all the unnecessary files like the index.css file, the test file, all the things that we don't need. And then what I did is I basically imported this data.json file, which includes the data that we're going to be using for this little project. But in this case, I wanted to make this video as customizable as possible for those who are watching. So in this case, you can just replace this data to whatever you want to use, right? If you want to create a JSON file with your own data, or you want to grab some data from an API and use it, that's 100% fine. We're going to be using this fake data over here that I got from the internet. Again, if you want to check it out, just look at the code in the description because the data is going to be there. But this is basically it for this, right? This is the data we're using. And then I just basically added some styling for our app.css. This is the basic styling I added. I imported some fonts because this is the font I'm going to be using. I also added a gradient to the background, which is the gradient you guys saw. I really like this color, and I really like, I don't know, it just gives a good vibe. It doesn't have anything to do with this search bar in its own, but I really wanted to use this. So what we want to do is we want to start by implementing our search bar component. So what I mean by that is we're going to create an external component into our application called search bar, and that will be what we will be using. That component will take in as props two pieces of information. The first one is the placeholder for the actual input for the search bar, and the other one is the actual data that the search bar will be searching. I made it this way because, again, as I mentioned, I want to make it as reusable and customizable as possible. If you want to use the search bar many different parts in your application, you can actually use it and just change pass different data and pass different placeholders as props to that component, and it will be very easy to actually re-implement it. So what we want to do is I want to create a new folder over here. I'm going to call it components, like this. And over here, I want to create a file called searchbar.js. And on top of that, I also want to, it's not a folder, it's another file called searchbar.css, like this. And over here, we're going to write rfce, which is a command from a snippet that I have, and it will generate this functional component for the search bar. Now, in the search bar, we're going to put everything related to searching and filtering the data. So we're going to add here not only the input, but we're also going to add the little window that appears, which shows the actual data and all the logic for filtering the data. Now, if you want to actually make it so that it will work in every single set of data, then you have to add some more customization to it, because whenever we're filtering for the specific books in our case, we need to identify which fields we're using. And you guys will see that later on, but I'll explain as we go. So over here, we have our search bar component, and we want to start building the UI for it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to come over here and I want to give this a class name, and let's call it search. Then over here, I want to create, I want to divide this into two different places. I want to create here a div called, let's call it search inputs. This will contain like the input where we write our actual book name. And also it will include the button, like the little, I forgot how to say it, the little icon on the right, and maybe the clear button as well. And then we want to create another div over here, which is actually going to show the result. And we can call this whatever you want, but let's call it data result, like this. Now, inside of the search inputs, we want to basically just add, as I mentioned, an input, which will be the actual input where we're going to be searching for stuff. And inside of it, let's make it a type of text. And for now, let's not put any placeholder, any values or anything like that. Let's just leave it like this. And then finally, I want to add another div over here, which will contain the little square that appears right next to the input, which inside of it, there will be the icon. And we'll be grabbing icons from Material UI, so I will show you guys how to implement that. But this div over here will have a class name of search icon, like this. Now, before we move on, let's actually start implementing the props that we're going to be taking in through this component. So this component will take in two different props. One of them will be the placeholder, and the other one will be the actual data, like this. And let's actually import this in our app.js so that we can actually see it appearing in our screen, because right now we can't actually render anything. So if we want to actually see that in our screen, we go to the app.js and we import this at the top. So let's import the search bar like this. From the component file, and then inside of the app, let's just put here the search bar as the component we want to render. Now it will show the little input over here. That's the only actual HTML item that we added, but what we want to do is we want to again pass the two props that we defined. So we defined placeholder as a prop because if you know this, in an input you can have a placeholder, which is just a little text that appears saying like what you want to write in the input. So if I come over here and I just set the placeholder for this input to be equal to whatever we pass from the props, like this, then we can actually customize this. And for example, I'll just give it a placeholder of I don't know, enter a book name, something like this. I don't know if this is what I actually put in the example that I showed in the beginning of the video, but if we go now here, you can see the placeholder appears. So the data that we want to pass as props to this component, we're going to import it in our app.js. So you can see we have a JSON file, right? So in this case, if we want to access this, we just import the data. So I'll call it book data, like this, because this is data from actual books. And I'll say from./data.json. And I'll just pass this through the data prop, like this. Now, if you're making an API request, you could put a logic from for like actually requesting the data and then just passing the data over here. It will make no difference if you do it in both ways. But again, if you want to access and use the example that I'm using, just check the code in the description. Now that we have both of the props being passed and we can actually start implementing stuff into our search bar, let's add some styling to our input. So in our search bar.css, we currently have no access to it. So I will just come here at the top and I'll just import the file. So let's just say search bar.css, like this. And what we want to do is, I don't want to go step by step on the CSS because it's not the focus of the video. As I've been doing in my previous videos, I actually will just cut the video, show the CSS, explain what I did in each part of the CSS, and then just move on because or else the videos would be pretty long. It was something that you guys requested, and I think it improves the flow of the video. So I'll be back in a second with the CSS done, and I'll go over what it means. Okay guys, so as you can see, our input now looks a lot better. It is centered a little bit lower, it has a margin top, and I also increased its size and I made it look better. Basically this is the CSS. I just added some margin to the search inputs div and also gave it a display of flags. Then for the input, I removed its initial border, gave it a little bit of a radius, changed the background color, then I also increased its height, its width, gave some padding, increased the font size, And then for the search icon, which is actually this part over here, which currently we won't be seeing anything because we haven't actually edited the icon yet. But what we did is we just gave it the foundation for when we put the SVG icon inside of it, and we also increased its size, we centered everything, and I think it looks pretty nicely. So what we want to do now is we want to actually import the Material UI icons. So to do that, what you want to do is there's this website called Material UI, like here, and inside of it you can very easily see in the Getting Started section, installation, you can see that to install Material UI into your application, you just run these two commands: yarn add Material UI core, and then you also run yarn add Material UI icons, and this will allow you to have access to several icons in your application. I actually just installed it. You can see that it is right over here. So to have access to it, you will need to install both libraries, and I would recommend doing so. So when you've installed both of the libraries, we just come here at the top and we'll just import it like this. We'll say import, and then we need to search for an actual icon. So I'll come down here and go back to the icons part, and we want to actually get the little search icon. So I'm gonna put search, and this is the one that we actually want. So we'll just click over here. It will give you the import statement. I'll copy this. I'll come to Visual Studio Code and I'll just paste it over here. And now we have access to the icon, which looks pretty nice. And what we want to do is we want to grab this search icon thing and we want to put it over here. So I'll just paste it over here and make it a component like this. And now you'll see that our actual input should have this in the right. So now that we have this done, let's actually start implementing the logic for the actual filtering and searching for the data. So right now what we want to do is we just want to display the data, right? We want to see the data appearing in our screen. So inside of the data result div, I want to actually loop through the data like this. I want to grab the data that we grabbed from the props. I just want to say map, and then for each element of the actual list, we want to grab a value, which is a book and a key. So let's just say value, key, and just run through each element. Now this is going to loop through every single element in the data set that we gave it, and we can return some HTML for each element. So what I want to return is I want to return a div, and right now all I want to do with this div is I just want to list out the actual name or the title of the book. Now if we go to the data.json, you see that each book has access to an author, a country, a link, a language, and a title. So if I say value.title, then I should be able to access the title of the book. So what I want to do is I want to say value.title, and this will actually display the title for each book as it loops through the list. If we come over here, you'll see that it actually does, but obviously the list is huge and you can't really see it because we haven't added any styling. But you can see that at least it's showing everything. But to make it easier for us to see, let's start adding some components to this specific, for each item that we actually iterate through. Let's, instead of using a div, let's make this an A tag. And the reason why we're making this an A tag is because I want to be able to click on each book, and it will actually open a link to a different page explaining what the book is and everything, so you're able to actually navigate and look information for that specific book. So I'm going to make this a link tag, and I'm going to give this a class name of let me see, data item, like this. And then I want to give this an href of value.link. And the reason why I can actually do this is because, again, in the data.json, they have a link element, which if it's just a link for a Wikipedia page of the book. So in our case, this is very handy because we can actually make this a link, and whenever we click on each item, it will bring us to that page. Now, this might be completely different for your case if you're using different data. So if you actually don't need to do this, you can skip and just wait for when I filter the data. So also what I want to do is I want to give this a target and make it blank, so that when we click on the link, it will actually open up in a new tab. So now that we've done this, we want to make this we want to put this title inside of a paragraph tag, just so that we give it a little bit more of styling and we organize it a little bit better. So let's just do it like this, and now it should be done. Now let's just refresh it. You can see that each link now, each actually title becomes now a link, and if I click on it, it will open up the Wikipedia page for that specific book. Now this looks great. However, as I mentioned before, let's add some styling to it, because if you recall, whenever I was searching for the books, a little window appeared and you can actually scroll through the window. It looked pretty nice. So to do that, I'm gonna add some of the CSS, and I'll be back in a second. Okay guys, as you can see, from the last segment to this one, things have changed a lot. And it might seem like we've done a lot. However, this is all CSS, and the CSS does it all for us. You can see that right now, the actual searching doesn't work. It doesn't change anything. Right now, it's just listing every single book, and we can just scroll down through the list. But a little window appeared, which looks pretty nice, and you can actually hover over each item and see them appearing in your screen. To do that, the CSS that I wrote is actually not that hard. You can see that all we did is we gave it some styling for the data result, because in our search bar.js, the div before the actual data.map is called data result. So what I did is I basically made it so that it's right below the search bar, like here. Give it a little margin of 5 pixels, and then just made it give it a width, a height, change the background color, and then importantly, I made it overflow hidden, so that every book inside of this list because the list of books, there's so many books that actually it would overflow the size of this actual div. So if you make it overflow hidden, it will just hide everything that is that overflows this actual div, if you know what I mean. And then I gave it an overflow Y of auto, so that we can actually scroll through the list inside of this div. And then over here, this basically just removes the scroll bar, because if I don't have this, you'll see that there's actually a scroll bar that appears, and I don't think it looks good. So I like to do it this way, and it looks a little bit better in my opinion. Then what I did is I accessed every single data item, and what I mean by every single data item is, if you look over here, we're rendering a link with a class name of data item for every single element in the data set. So when we do this, it would actually, each data item is this thing over here. So what we did is we basically just gave it some styling, gave it some width, some height, made it a display flex, made the color of the text inside of it be black, and then gave it a little margin for each of the paragraph tags. And as you can see, we also gave it a hover effect. And this over here is a clear button, which you might be thinking, okay, we don't have a clear button, but we're going to implement it. I just wanted to put the CSS really quickly, just so before we actually implement this element. However, this will be a button that we add over here, so that you can actually clear whatever you're writing. So now that we have the UI done, here comes the best part, which is actually where we are able to filter through the data. So to do this, what I want to do is I actually want to create a state in our application, 2 states actually, which will be able to hold both the filtered data list and also which word we're trying to search, so which title we're trying to search. To do that, we're actually going to import the useEffect hook over here, or not the useEffect, but the useState hook. And inside of this functional component, we're going to say const, and we're going to create 2 states. One of them is going to be called filtered data, like this. And we're going to give it a function name of set filtered data, and it's going to be equal to a use state, and it's going to be an array like this. Now this is actually the only state we're going to be using. I don't know why I thought we were going to be using 2, because we only need access to this. But now that we have this actual state, what we want to do is we want to actually just display this data result div over here if there is the case where this state is empty. And why do we want to do that? Is because we don't want to show the list of books before someone actually starts searching for it, right? We don't want to even show this window. So the way we do this is we'll come over here, and very easily we'll just wrap all of this around with some JavaScript, and we'll just ask the question, oh, when do we want to show this? Well, we only want to show this when the array filter data dot length is not equal to 0. And with this logic, it will only show this div, this window, if this array is not empty. And right now, it won't actually ever show because we're not doing anything. It's always empty. But this is a good time for us to start implementing the logic to actually fill up this filter data and filter through the actual data. Now, to do this, we're going to have to pass a function to this input, which is going to be called every time there's any changes to the input. And what I mean any changes is whenever someone write another letter inside of this input, or write anything inside of this input, this function will be called, and it will instantaneously, dynamically change and filter the data out to whatever you're writing. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass here a function called onChange, and on this onChange function, we're going to pass a function called handle actually let's call it handle filter, like this. And over here, let's create this function. I'll call it handle filter. And over inside of it, it will take one thing as an argument, which is an event. And in React, if you pass this to an on change like this, event will basically represent the event of the input. So for example, if we want to access the value inside of the input, or which basically means whatever the user is writing inside of the input, all we have to do is we just have to access event.target.value for it. So in our case, let's grab this value and create a variable called search word, or word entered. I'll call it search word, but basically it's just a word that the user is currently trying to search for. And then what we want to do is we actually want to start writing the logic to filter through the data to only show the books that have a title similar to what we're trying to search for. And to do that, we're going to create a new array over here called new filter, and it's going to be equal to the data that we are trying to filter for dot filter. And if you're not familiar with the filter function, I definitely recommend watching a whole video on it. I believe I have a video on it if you're interested. But basically, it's very important. All it does is over here, you can pass one thing as an argument. I'll call it value. It's a variable. And inside of it, you can write a function that represents what you like, the logic behind filtering through data. That's literally what it is. And I'll explain better what it means. Basically, when you say this over here, this function will actually loop through the whole data set, and for each element, it's going to store the element or store the book inside of this variable called value. And over here, we need to return a boolean saying if we want to keep this element or not. So in our case, we want to say if the book includes the word that we're trying to search for, if the book title includes the word that we're trying to search for, then keep this book inside of the new array. If it doesn't, then eliminate it. So in our return statement over here, all we want to do is we want to say, okay, if value, if the book dot title, so if the title of the book includes, which is a function in JavaScript, which basically asks, okay, if this thing includes whatever we put inside of here, then it means true. So we just want to ask if value.title.includes the search word, then we want to keep it. If not, then we don't want to keep that element. So this is the whole logic behind filtering. And down here, all we want to do is we just want to set the filter data to be equal to the new filter array that we created up here. So now that we have this basically done, what we want to do is we actually want to display the actual filter data down here, right? So you can see that right now we're looping through the data instead of the filter data array. So all we have to do is we have to change it from data to filter data. So we'll just call it filtered data. And now if we come over here, you'll see that if we refresh this, why is it saying handle filter is not defined? I think I called it handle filter with a capital I for some reason, but I'm gonna save this. And what I want to do is I want to come over here. You'll see that when I start writing over here, it will actually start searching for books. So when I start writing th, you'll see it's constantly changing. But the thing is, I'll search for this book over here, The Sound and the Fury. So when I write The Sound and the Fury, you'll see it's not actually showing the element, the actual book. And the reason for that is because we're not accounting for something very important. What if the includes function actually doesn't match two things which doesn't have matching, like if it's a capital T and a lowercase t, then it won't match. So this is important because we want to account for capital and lowercase letters, right? We really want to, because the book Harry Potter with a capital H and with a lowercase h is the same thing. So what we do to fix that is before we actually ask if it includes the search word, we want to convert both the title and the search word to lowercase or uppercase. In our case, let's just convert both of them to lowercase. So I'll just say dot to lowercase like this, which is a JavaScript function which converts a string to lowercase. And then for the search word, I'll do the same thing. I'll convert it to lowercase like this. And now that we have both of this done, we can actually start searching for the books again. And you'll see that if I write The Divine Comedy, it actually matches perfectly. If I write other books as well, let me search for The Book of Job, you'll see that it will only show this book individually, which is amazing, right? And this is literally the logic for searching done. But one thing I want to just point out is I hate showing like all the books in the data set at once because it becomes very memory heavy. So what I like to do is I actually like to only show some of them. So I actually only want to show and map through maybe 10 to 15 of them. I still want to be able to scroll down, but why would I want to show 50 books when I can only show 15, right? And if you want to see the rest of the books, you can just filter for them. So what I like to do is, in this filter data, before I actually map through the elements, I want to use the slice function and slice the array into the 15 best matches. So it will only show 15 items. And now if we refresh this, you'll see that I'll search and it will only show 15 items. It doesn't allow you to scroll further. Even if I erase everything, it only shows like, I don't know, the least amount of items possible. So this is great, right? But one thing we're not accounting for is the fact that when we erase all the elements in the input, it still shows books, which is pretty bad. So how we're going to fix this is we're actually going to come over here at the top, and before we set the filter data to the new filter, we want to ask if the search word in the input right now is equal to an empty string. So if there's nothing in the input, then we actually want to set filter data to be equal to an empty array, but else we actually want to write the logic that we did before, which is set the filter data to be equal to new filter. Because now, if I refresh the page and I search for something like Hamlet, and I erase everything, it now disappears. But if I keep searching for stuff like Berlin, whatever, it actually shows the item again. Now, another thing that I really want to do is be able to clear the input. So if you recall in the beginning, I showed that this over here disappears and an X button appears, and I can click on that button to actually clear the input. Now this is the last little piece of logic that I want to implement into this project, so I want to show it to you guys really quick. So to do that, we actually need to grab a new icon in Material UI. So I'm going to come over here and let's search for a close button icon. So it's like an X, like this over here. So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to import it from Material UI up here at the top. And what I want to do is I want to be able to, whenever we're not searching for anything, so there's nothing in the input, I want to show this over here. But whenever we start writing, I want to actually start showing the X button over here. So to do that, the logic is actually pretty simple. I just want to come over here to where we have the icon, and I just want to ask, okay, if filtered data dot length is equal to 0, then I want to show the search icon, so the little search thing that we're showing over there. But if it's not equal to 0, then I want to show the close icon, like this. And now you'll see that it will keep switching, right? If I start writing, it will switch to an X, but if I remove it, it will switch to this. But it's not functional yet. We actually aren't able to click on this. So what we want to do is we want to first of all give it an ID, and this is the ID. This is the close button that I showed you guys in the search bar.css over here. This is what I meant. I just wanted to make the cursor be pointer whenever you hover over the button, and let's just give it an ID of clear button. And you can see that now if I save this and I come over here and I start typing, when I hover over this, it will have the little cursor pointer, which is really nice. So now what we want to do is we want to add functionality to this as well. So we're going to give this an on click, and when you click on this icon, I want to be able to call a function called clear input. So let's just create a function called clear input over here, and this function will be very simple. All it does is, first of all, it will clear this the input that we have over here very easily. And second of all, it will actually remove everything from the actual filtered array. So to remove everything from the filtered array, we'll just say set filter data to be equal to an empty array. And to remove everything inside this input, we can take two approaches. One of them is using the useRef hook, which I'm not sure if I really want to follow that approach right now because that can introduce unnecessary complexity to the project. One other easy way is to actually create another state over here and call it like word. Actually, let me say word entered or something like that, and then just come over here and say set word entered like this. And what we want to do is over here this will be a string, and it just represents the actual input. So why do we want to do this? Because we can come over here to the input and we can give it a value, like this. I'll just give it a value. And let's just make the value be equal to word entered. And normally, we'll come over here and set the word entered to be equal to the search word. So if it seems redundant right now because all it does is, oh, and I need to remove this on click because we're not passing the function yet. Actually, I'll just pass the function. It's called clear input, right? Yeah. So right now it seems redundant because if I refresh this page, you'll see nothing really happens. I can write on this thing and the value in the input shows the actual word that we're searching for. But where this becomes important is because we can actually alter whatever the value of this state is, and it will show the reflection inside of this input. So if I set the word enter to be equal to an empty string, it should set the value of the input to be an empty string as well. So let's try that out. Let me come over here and write the divine comedy, and if I want to erase this, I'll just click over here, and both the list and the input are cleared. Now I believe this is basically it. You can see we have a very nice search bar, so I can search for the possessed. I can click on every single item, and when I click on it, it will open up another tab, which is pretty nice. I can delete it. I can actually clear it. I really like the search bar. I use it in so many projects. You can see that you can actually create many of them by just adding a new like component. I can have 3 search bars in my project and search for all of them. I'll search for the divine comedy on this one. I'll search for the possessed on this one. I don't know these books. I just got this random list online. But you can see we can reuse this component many times, which is pretty nice. And yeah, that's basically it. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I really hope you guys got value from this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like down below and comment what you want to see next. Subscribe because I post 2 to 3 times a week, and I would massively appreciate if you guys could help push my videos to more people. I would be very happy if you guys did that. And yeah, that's basically it. If you have any comments, leave it down below. If you have any questions, I'll definitely answer them. And yeah, really hope you guys enjoyed it, and I see you guys next time.